Chapter 136 Antique Ruins 1. Yes, he looked strong, all right. Sharon and Amy agreed. It wasn't just because he had a tattoo. Their sharp senses felt a real latent strength in the man's appearance. But Rian thought differently. Humph, just because he's putting on a show doesn't mean he gained strength he didn't have before. There's no need to be scared. Rian's senses were inferior to the others. That's why he couldn't grasp Schema, but Sharon was rather comforted by that appearance. No matter how fearsome the situation, Rian would serve steadfastly as their shield. Great, let's start exploring the ruins. After passing through the tall booth, the formal investigation began. The Karagu ruin was a temple dedicated to a god and had a square structure that measured 2 kilometers from east to west and 2 kilometers from north to south. A long corridor extended after crossing a 200-meter lake via a bridge, and only after passing another 500 meters along the pilgrimage route did they reach the central temple. Now it's really huge. Is this really a building constructed thousands of years ago? I heard from others that it was buried in volcanic ash, so it's only this size, but supposedly it was much larger. Sharon looked down at his feet. Since the volcanic eruption was an event 500 years ago, the layer of volcanic ash should have formed beneath the surface. Amy, who was at the forefront, turned around and shouted to Sharon, Sharon, what are you doing? We need to look around the central temple. Sharon didn't respond. He was absorbed in something with a faint smile, perplexed. Amy approached Sharon. What's wrong? Amy entered the spirit zone. Spirit zone? Why all of a sudden? In the moment she realized, Amy clapped her palms together. Ah, right. Mages can extend their senses with the spirit zone. If something was hidden beneath the ruins, there was no way it could escape their synesthesia. Understood. I'll give it a try. Amy entered the spirit zone while exploring the underground with synesthesia. Her eyebrows began to gradually furrow. After about 5 seconds, she finally released her spirit zone as if she realized something. Sharon, this is, yes, nothing surfacing. There should be at least some base, but there's nothing. Isn't it because the volcanic ash layer is thick? What if we dig deeper? It was difficult because she couldn't do it. However, after thinking for a moment, Sharon realized and exclaimed, Ah, there was that method. Amy could do it. Her specialty among the four techniques was long-range target type. The target type, also known as the cross zone, was a way in which the mage stood at the intersection of two lines and rapidly spun to swiftly strike a specific target. But it didn't end there. Amy, who had entered the advanced class, chose her specialization and developed the target type into sniper mode. The sniper mode, where the shape of the spirit zone was perfectly straight, was characterized by the mage positioning themselves at the end of the zone to enhance range. This form is called directional zone, and although the rotation of the zone is slow, it could produce a range at least 4 times longer than the target type. Even if she expanded the zone's radius to just 500 meters in diameter, it was over 1 kilometer in the target type. From there, if she re-entered sniper mode, she could reach a target at a distance of up to 4 kilometers. Currently, Amy's default radius was 68 meters in diameter. When switched to target type, it was 143 meters, and when she entered sniper mode, it exceeded 500 meters. All right, I'll give it a shot. Amy entered the zone, simultaneously using the sequence method. The transformation of the four techniques was carried out at high speed, and the cross held its vertical position with the axis tilted 90 degrees. Sniper mode. Amy's spirit zone began to dig as if it were pouring rain. A groan escaped between her clenched teeth. As the zone lengthened, durability inevitably weakened. It wouldn't be a problem if there were no obstacles in the way, but she didn't know what was underground, and the zone bent here and there. Amy infiltrated even more desperately, and at that moment she thought she had touched something for the first time. The spirit zone shuddered, and her consciousness shook. Hyok, Amy, are you okay? Sharon quickly aided Amy. Cold sweat burst on her forehead. Sharon quickly helped Amy. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. I'm okay. This is going to be tough. I've drilled up to 300 meters, but it's impossible to go deeper from there. Beyond that, it's like throwing a thread into the sea and letting it drift. Sharon could guess how powerful the force in action was. Amy's spirit zone wasn't weak in durability by any means. However, she was comparing her zone to a fragile thread. But at least we found out that there's something there. That's a great achievement in itself. It's an achievement for sure, but it's not enough. We need someone who can expand their spirit zone while maintaining its durability. Unless it's a high-level zoner, navigating with the spirit zone will be impossible. Even for Sharon, it seemed that anyone below that level wouldn't dare to explore the ruins. If I knew it would be like this, I would tell my older brother Aris. If it's the expansion of the expedition my brother belongs to, there will be a zoner who can explore this place. Or we could ask Professor Ethela. Ethelia, being a bishop, was a zoner specialized in durability. She was the perfect person to explore this type of terrain. If it's Professor Ethelia, it might be possible. I don't know how deep it is, but she could easily break through to where I've reached, interrupted Rian. But if that's the case, wouldn't we not need to investigate? I heard that the director gave a clue. Wouldn't his words imply that we should solve it ourselves? Sharon and Amy fell silent as they looked at each other. In their focus on efficiency, they sometimes forgot the significance. Rian was frank. Rian is right, but it's too precious. But it's a waste. If we could break through here, we wouldn't need to investigate the ruins. What if I keep thinking this way? Sharon understood Amy's feelings. This trip wasn't about playing explorers in the ruins, but about finding clues about Miro. Let's try several things for now. It's not something we can do right away. Now that we've come to this, I'm more curious. I think I'll only be satisfied when I see it with my own eyes. Leaving only vague imaginations about the underground, Sharon's group continued their exploration. However, the ruins of Kerogo were actually just a common tourist destination, as if mocking those who were investigating seriously. Men chatted, and children ran around spinning pinwheels. Amy, are we doing it right? Don't ask. I'm feeling a sense of self reproach right now. After visiting the last route, the central temple, the group finally stopped their investigation. They couldn't find anything unusual in the ruins above the ground. I don't understand. The director said we could figure it out if we came here. But with what does a ruin from thousands of years ago have to do with Miro? Anyway, it's certain that there's something underground. We have to explore with the spirit zone, right? Rian's eyes lit up as if he had remembered something. I have a good idea. If we can't get through with the spirit zone, why don't we dig into the ground and enter? Won't something eventually come out? Sharon and Amy looked at Rian as if it were ridiculous and then resumed the conversation. What about contacting the locals? Since they live with the locals, there must be someone who speaks the common language. Yeah, but I don't think those people would know anything important. Maybe if we had an interpreter. Rian shouted loudly, Hey, why aren't you responding? I said let's dig. Tess intervened. Idiot, how could you wield a shovel in a ruin that even the autonomous government can't touch? If you do such a thing, you'll be severely punished for damaging cultural heritage. After scolding Rian, she turned to Sharon. What are you going to do now? I don't know. The best thing would be to investigate, but I think it will be difficult at this time. We'd need to find an interpreter and also require permission to enter the native autonomous region. Really? Well, I have a method we can try right away. Do you want to hear it? Oh, really? Tell me, what is it? Rian said with a troubled expression, as if he couldn't embarrass himself enough. You're not suggesting we secretly dig the ground, are you? Tess desperately suppressed her anger and continued. Anyway, this is what I thought. While you were focusing on the ruins, I was looking around. I found a peculiar point. A peculiar point? What is it? Tess scanned the surroundings with her eyes. Take a close look at the people. Most are tourists, but there are some who aren't. Those who travel in groups carry weapons and don't care much about the ruins. The three looked around. Indeed, there were some. Obviously not many, but armed men were walking around. Ah, I see. Yes, those are mercenaries. Why are mercenaries wandering around a tourist spot? Some of them look quite strong. In the end, there must be something about these ruins. And do the mercenaries know about it? That's right. After all, contacting the natives takes time, and they might not talk to us, right? But the mercenaries are different. The fact that they've come here means they know something. Sharon admired Tess' insight. While others were focusing on the ruins, she only observed the external circumstances. If one knew Tess' background, it was natural. Historically, the Elzane family had produced numerous commanders and diplomats, but their real strength lay elsewhere. It was in espionage activities. Of course, they were seen as spies from the perspective of enemy countries, but the information they infiltrated and sent from various nations made a significant contribution to Tarmia Kingdom's diplomatic strategy. It's definitely a good idea. No, it's the only idea for now. Sharon decided to adopt test strategy. All right, so do we follow the mercenaries from now on? Follow? Honestly, I'm not sure. Getting caught by a high-level mercenary is a headache, especially if they have a sensorial system schema. We should definitely consider ourselves caught. It might work if I follow them alone. I see the problem now. I don't even know how to hide my presence. So what do we do? Hoo, do we really need to go looking for them? If they are mercenaries, there's a place full of them, right? Really? Is there such a place? Where is it? Tess winked and pointed somewhere. Wanna grab a drink during the day? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On the southwest inner wall of the ruined site, there was a series of stores made from wooden boards. In the sequence of restaurants, bars, and cafes, compared to the general stores, the scale was shabby, but the profits were much better. It was located within the ruined site, and even though the prices were high, people still chose this place for its convenience. Sharon's group entered the bar. They wondered how many people would be drinking in broad daylight, but almost all the tables were full except for two. Sharon's group chose a corner. Amy sat next to Sharon, and across from them, Rian and Tess took their seats. Are you going to drink? I suppose we should order something. This is a bar after all, but let's focus on the snacks. It's probably better to have lunch here. Tess placed an order. Traditional Gallant Island liquor and hot noodles with minced meat were served. The four people who had a poor breakfast stopped talking for a while and concentrated on eating. At that moment, laughter was heard from the next table. Initially, they tried not to care, but the annoying laughter continued, and they couldn't help but get annoyed. End of chapter 136. Chapter 137. Antique Ruins 2. Are those punks laughing at us right now? Forget it. Don't turn your head. They're just drunk. Tess patted Rian and the legend to calm him down. Fights among mercenaries in taverns were not uncommon, but given their professions, they rarely ended well. They're still not responding. It's impossible that they can hear us. We're laughing at you, idiots. Look at that kid's sword. It's ridiculously big, huh? And the size of the woman next to him isn't a joke either. Although I won't say where. Ha ha ha. Rian clenched his fists. He could tolerate being insulted, but he couldn't stand them mocking his friends. But then Tess grabbed Rian's wrist. If she left him alone, he seemed ready to flip the table. While eating noodles, Sharon remembered his memories. When they entered, there were four mercenaries sitting at that table. Three men, one woman. Archers seemed to be included, and the woman was probably a mage, judging by the fact that she had no weapons. An archer and a mage, a pretty solid group. The mockery from the mercenaries continued without respite. Is that blonde guy pretending to eat now? Please look back once. We're ready to throw a bottle. I'm in a really bad mood today. That's why I want to see some blood. Oh, stop it. Is it fun to tease kids? The woman tried to stop, but it wasn't sincere. It seemed that she preferred to enjoy it this way rather than openly mocking. Hey kids, don't you have the courage to fight? Aren't you even ashamed in front of women? You probably boasted about how strong you were. Hello, can you hear us? Respond if you hear, or do you want us to come over? Rian couldn't contain his anger. He knew it was part of the operation, but he didn't want to endure this insult. However, Rian finally didn't move. It was because his eyes met Sharon's, who was looking at him with a calm expression. Sharon, Sharon, with whom he was bound by a knight's oath, said nothing. If he couldn't endure even this level of humiliation, he would prefer to disgrace Sharon's face. Yes, this is also practice. I'm practicing in this journey as a knight apprentice. Rather, it gave me a good opportunity to test myself. As soon as he made a decision, he could endure it as if it were a lie. Rian had another chance to contemplate the uselessness of words. After about 10 minutes, the mercenaries prepared to leave. They thought they had obtained the complete victory. They were the perfect snacks for a drinking party. Keke, this is the first time I've seen such cowardly bastards in my life. Oh, come on. They were weak kids, so of course they must have been scared. Don't you feel sorry for them? Hey, you're lucky. You don't have to be beaten. You'll live your whole life like that. You'll live for a long time. The mercenaries paid for their drinks and disappeared. The tavern owner, who had been indifferent until then, rushed over to the table. Are you okay? Those damn bastards saying abusive words against innocent children. Do you know them? They've been coming often lately. They get drunk and make a scene, especially against those who don't want to fight like you. I want to tell them not to come, but I don't know what harm will happen if that happens. Anyway, you held up well. In times like this, keeping calm is the solution. Sharon's eyes lit up. If there wasn't something in the ruins, there would be no way for a group with a mage to come. Tess comforted Rian. The two simpletons didn't have the ability to deceive themselves like Sharon. It was literally a situation they endured with determination. You did well, Rian. I was so nervous that you might cause a scene. It was dangerous. But are we going to meet them again anyway? Didn't you hold back for that? All right, let's leave too. Sharon stood up and said, when they paid for their drinks and left the tavern. The mercenaries were walking towards the central temple. Instead of following them, Sharon and the others chose to watch from a high place. Given that most of an archer's scheme constructions were from the sensory system, there was a high probability of being caught if they tried to close the distance. Having climbed to the fourth floor of the temple building, Sharon observed the mercenaries. Surprisingly, they were a young group of people who were no older than 30. The slender figure swordsman seemed to be the leader. The sword he wore around his waist was a steel sword with a great recognition, enough for Tess to remember the artisan's name just by looking at the design. Next to them stood a giant with a blunt weapon, followed by a long-haired man and a woman in a robe. Two warriors, one of them a swordsman, an archer, and a mage. We can summarize it like that. Although it's a tourist spot, they maintain formation. They seemed to be an experienced group. It was a good decision to follow them. The mercenaries walked to the stepped altar on the east side of the central temple. Sharon remembered that place. It was a peculiar place, guarded by natives, which seemed unusual. One of the mercenaries, the archer, seemed to be speaking to the native in a mix of gestures and words. He seemed to know the Kerugu language. The native looked around with sadness. It was clear they were concerned about people's attention. Sharon and the others realized it was the right time and descended the stairs. When the native activated the device, a rectangular fissure appeared on the altar and was pushed inward. As the thick stone door moved aside and an entrance covered with a dark barrier appeared. Wait a moment, we're going to into the mercenaries who were on their way to stopped and looked back with stern faces. But then tension quickly dissipated, replaced by irritation. The children they were intimidating at the tavern were running over. What? When did they follow us? Sir, can't we come in too? Get lost. This is a place we found. Do you even know where this is? Don't be like that, please. The moment Sharon pleaded again, the leader drew his sword. The speed of the unsheathed sword wasn't fast, but the naturalness ingrained through countless repetitions was excellent. Do you want to die? Do we look like an easy target? If you don't back off, I'll cut all your throats right here. Unlike Sharon, unlike before, Sharon didn't step back. In the tavern, he couldn't even turn his head, but now he was looking directly into the eyes. The contrast made the leader uncomfortable. "These kids," spoke the indigenous person guard guarding the altar. "Are they with you?" The leader sheathed his sword and looked at the archer. The only person who could interpret was the archer. What's he saying? Is he asking if this kid is with us? Humph, what a group. Tell him we'll deal with them shortly, so please wait. When the archer conveyed the leader's words, the eyes of the natives widened. He spoke in an authoritative tone, as if they had been insulted. "Warriors don't fight here. Anyone who defiles the sacred altar with blood can never set foot here." The archer translated with a grimace. "It's better to stop. He says we won't be allowed in if we fight here. Damn it, lucky kids, saving their lives twice." As if the leader didn't care anymore, he sheathed his sword and walked toward the altar. The rest of the group followed him to the dark entrance. Sharon's group remained in place for a while. If they had entered together, there wouldn't have been a problem, but given the situation, they were concerned about the piercing gaze of the native. "If you wish to be tested, enter. The eyes of the angel will be watching you." What is this person saying? Well, since we've come, I think he's telling us to have fun. If he wanted to drive us away, he would have closed the door. Sharon took his steps, mindful of the other party. There was no particular reaction from the native. Only then did the four, convinced, enter the dark entrance that seemed like an abyss. "Let me know if there's anything else I can help you with." In an instant, 8 people vanished, yet no tourist was aware of it. Upon entering the altar, Sharon first examined the structure. Contrary to the appearance from the outside, it wasn't dark inside because torches were lit. Square holes descended into the floor, and the stairs spiraled down the inner wall at right angles. Looking down, he could see the mercenary group that had already made 2 turns down the spiral. Sharon quickened his pace. There might be a second door, so it wasn't good to lag too far behind the mercenaries. Finally, a group of 8 people descended the stairs. The leader was annoyed with the kids who had taken a free ride with the information he had paid a considerable sum for. However, fulfilling the purpose of coming here was the top priority, so he put aside the idea of fighting for the time being. The archer behind the mercenary group asked Sharon, who was following them, "Are you sane, kids? Why intrude into a place like this with barely a drop of blood in your hands? Then, why did you come here, big brother? Why don't tell me you followed me without knowing anything?" "Yes, we don't know." The archer looked at Sharon in puzzlement. He thought it might be possible. After all, the existence of a hidden door in the ruins was public knowledge. Something exists beneath the ruins. However, no one knows what it is. That is the limit of what the common people interested in the site can imagine. "As we're already here, can't you tell us, why did we enter here?" Why did we enter here? The archer wondered what to do. He ran through the information market until his feet sweated to find the hidden door. Moreover, the code had a high level of information, so he had to pay up to 20 gold. But once they passed through the door, the value of the information essentially vanished. The archer thought up to that point and spoke with bright eyes. "What's with this? The fact that you entered means you broke a high security code. In terms of money, that's worth at least 100 gold. So I'll sell you information. 5 gold coins per question. How about it? Okay, we'll find out anyway when we descend. When Sharon spoke as if there was no need to ask, the archer became nervous. He felt ridiculed by the little boy, aside from making money. This insolent brat. At that moment, the leader stopped walking. When the leader stopped, the people following him reduced their pace, one after another. No, now that I think about it, that sounds fair. Do you know how hard it was for us to find this place? You can't just take that for granted. If you want to go down from here, you have to pay us. Sharon glanced again at Amy. When she shrugged, he nodded as if understanding and spoke to the leader. Then we won't go down. We'll stay here. Go ahead and do your thing. What the hell? The leader got excited without realizing it. He should have noticed it when he didn't even turn his head in the tavern. The phrase, only their mouths are alive, meant cases like this. But if it's 1 gold per coin per question, I'm willing to accept the deal. 1 gold, the leader's mind spun rapidly. After all, they couldn't recover their cost from them. In that case, isn't it a profit to earn even if it's a few gold coins? All right, 1 gold per question. Pay 1 gold first. Sharon rummaged through the pouch of gold coins and took out 1 gold. He could have done his research separately away from the mercenaries, but his friends respected Sharon's judgment. Sharon thought this situation was worth a gold. They had no idea what might be underground. He thought that if he could prepare in advance with just 1 gold, it definitely wouldn't be a loss. For instance, if there lurked a danger only the mercenaries knew about, they would be caught with no chance if they fell into a trap. However, after hearing the explanation, they could roughly estimate the difficulty of the underground danger and exploration. Why did you come here? In case of a question too broad, there might be room for fabrication, so Sharon delved into the central part. End of chapter 137. Chapter 138. Labyrinth of time and space. However, the leader was also not an easy opponent. We came to meet the natives. Is that enough? That could be an answer, but you have to explain it. It's a breach of contract if this continues. I won't ask more. The leader regretted it. He intended to provoke Sharon, but ended up closing the deal too quickly. The cunning magician explained further. We don't know anything else either, because we really came just to meet the natives. I see. Sharon looked at his friends and nodded. If they also didn't know what was underground, the risk of falling into a trap was eliminated for now. Thinking it was a fair trade, Sharon took out an additional gold coin. Why did you come to meet the natives? Here's 1 gold coin. The archer who received the money clicked his tongue as if in conflict. To be honest, it was embarrassing to tell others. We came to look for loop. It's also distributed in the market, but we can buy it in bulk here at a much cheaper price. We plan to sell it and finance our adventures. Now, is that an answer? Sharon was surprised for a moment. It was a loop trafficking place that had nothing to do with the secret of the ruins, but the mercenaries had also found this place with fragmented information, so it was premature to conclude. What is this? Completely different from what I expected. A drug trafficking place? No, I shouldn't think that way. It's a drug for ordinary people, but a ritual tool for the natives. Therefore, it must be a sacred object. That means, ultimately, after finishing his thoughts, Sharon asked, by any chance, is this place connected to the autonomous area of the natives? What? How? Oh, damn. Realizing his mistake, the archer frowned. He had answered without receiving money. So, Sharon rummaged in his pocket and took out a gold coin. He had hurriedly asked, but he had no intention of playing a trick. Oh, here's 1 gold. Sorry for asking first. The archer stared at Sharon's outstretched hand. Of course, a gold coin wasn't easy to earn, but it wasn't an amount that would terrify a mercenary who had built their own career. Darn it, never mind, it's my mistake. It's not a mistake. That's how contracts work. I know, it's just that my pride won't let me accept it. Damn it, I can't believe I made such a mistake. I still have a long way to go. Then I'll consider the last question as a free service. Sharon returned the gold coin without hesitation. It wasn't the attitude of a prudent student to waste it when he didn't want to accept it. The archer was in trouble for no reason. At some point, he felt like a child was playing with him. Instead, let me ask you something. How did you find out, indeed, that information is top secret because loop is sacred to the natives? Also, if the profit margin is large enough to make a lot of money selling loop, it wouldn't be easy to free it. Ultimately, you'd need permission from a person with authority among the natives, and the only place where that person could be would be an autonomous area. The archer had nothing to say, while they wondered if there was anything worth doing with the money. What they found were the ruins of Kerugo. Sharon's brief words contained all the conclusions he had reached after spending several days and nights investigating Loop and examining the information market. What an incredible brain this brat had. Any more questions? No, that's all. Now let's go down and check. The archer smiled bitterly. He guessed why Sharon wasn't asking. Probably he noticed that no matter what he asked, he had nothing more to say. Sharon and the others descended for 20 minutes. Although it spiraled, it still had a great depth. When they reached the end of the stairs, a one-way corridor continued. Two natives stood at an iron door installed 10 meters ahead. Unlike the natives outside, they were bare-chested and barefoot beneath their pants. The tattoos starting at the navel branched out to their faces and looked intimidating even from a distance. Sharon didn't believe that place was an autonomous district. They would have to walk at least a few kilometers to delve into the Towa Mountain jungle. The mercenaries also showed signs of tension. The archer, acting as an interpreter, shifted his position to the leader's side. After exchanging some coded words in the Kerugu language, the native pressed the switch. When the iron wheel turned, the door opened sideways. Wow, Sharon's eyes lit up as if he had landed in a strange world. It was an octagonal room, carved in stone walls. On the other side of the entrance, they could see an iron door, and three men were standing guard there. In the center was an octagonal altar, identical to the shape of the room, flat and floating above each of its eight corners were spheres about 30 centimeters in diameter. Sharon's eyes lit up as if he had landed in a strange world. It was an octagonal room, carved in stone walls. On the other side of the entrance, they could see an iron door and three men were guarding it. In the center was an octagonal altar, identical in shape to the room, flat and floating over each of its eight corners were spheres about 30 centimeters in diameter. Sharon recalled from his memory. It was a sphere he had certainly been somewhere before. Hey, what's that? The archer looked at Sharon with a puzzled look. He didn't even know what it was until they arrived here, and the chances of anything being familiar to him were extremely slim. Why do you know what that is? That it's definitely from Miro. The leader moistened his lips. Hey, who do you think you are pretending to know? Do you think you remembered some bells hanging from your behind? The leader didn't like Sharon from the tavern. He despised men who lacked the courage to fight but were boastful in front of women, because he had no woman to impress. Miro, did you just say Miro? Asked a native guarding the entrance. Even Sharon, who didn't know the native language, could understand the word Miro. The archer, curious about the situation, reluctantly translated further. Is he asking if you know Miro? Yes, I met her once. When the archer said that, the eyes of the native distorted. When the tattoo twisted, it was like seeing a creature from a legend. You met? There can't be such a thing. That's a lie. No, it's not. I really met her. The native sank into deep thought. However, as if he had reached a simple conclusion, he quickly returned to having an empty look. I judge nothing. Only the eyes of the angel will watch over you. After leaving behind incomprehensible words and closing the iron door, Sharon put aside his regret and turned around. He thought the beginning was from now on anyway. As the mercenaries walked towards the center, a native arrived from the other side of the iron door. Apparently, of the three natives, two were gatekeepers, and only the man approaching seemed to have a different role. It was clear just from the color of the tattoo. While common people in Kerogo have red tattoos, this man's tattoo was white. This is a room of achievements and sacrifices. The eight eyes of an angel will judge you. To enter Kerogo, you must traverse the labyrinth of time and space. Upon hearing the word labyrinth, Sharon quickly turned his head, but the archer kept his mouth shut, as if he had no intention of interpreting further. Labyrinth? Did he just say labyrinth? What did that man say? Hey, don't misunderstand. I'm not your interpreter. Why should I explain everything to you? You're going to tell your colleagues anyway. Tell me quickly. I don't want to. From now on, let's not worry about others. We came here with something to do as well. The man with white tattoos looked at them with crossed arms. Sharon could tell just from his gestures that he was asking for a translation. Is there anyone among you who knows the ancient language? Oh, I know a little. Then translate. The opportunities are the same for everyone. The eyes of an angel watch over everything in the labyrinth of time and space. Why should I do that? They're not our companions. I don't know what you're judging, but please separate them. No, from the moment you entered the room of achievements and sacrifices, you are one. Will you achieve or sacrifice? That is the only choice you have. Damn it. We had bad luck. What are we going to do with these kids? As the conversation dragged on, the magician moved forward. What is he exactly saying? Tell me now. With no other choice, the archer conveyed the conversation they had heard so far. The mercenaries who heard everything were irritated. If they knew this was going to happen, they should have gotten rid of Sharon's party before coming here. Will the angel's eyes judge us? Does that mean They assess our abilities and group us with these brats. Isn't this too unfair for us? Amy's eyes narrowed as the magician complained. Hey, you keep calling us brats. How do you know if we have skills or not? Ho ho ho, so it's like that. Do you want to cling to us after taking advantage? Just so you know, if we mess things up because of you, you better be prepared. Humph, do whatever you want. We never planned to team up with you anyway. The magician smiled coldly. Who did they think they were? She was a novice mage, one of the most promising newcomers in the mercenary world. She didn't get along with inferior mercenaries, so her colleagues were only formed by people of similar age and level. On the other hand, those ignorant children were obviously students who learned swordsmanship and magic somewhere. What you learn in the academy is a world apart from real combat. For mercenaries who easily risk their lives, she could be sure they wouldn't hold her back, even compared to a certified mage. Ha, just wait and see, brats. I'll make you cry and beg once we've passed through here. Thanks to the women's dispute, they were able to bury they were able to bury petty feelings. As the eight awaited further instructions, the man with the white tattoo began to explain. There are two conditions to pass through the door. You can test your ability or send a person through the sacrifice of another. As soon as Sharon heard the translation, he asked the question, what do you mean by testing? What do we do? What do we need to specifically test? Hey, stop meddling. I'm not going to translate for you. He said we have to do this together. Ask him already. The archer who had nothing to say gritted his teeth and translated. The man with the white tattoo nodded and continued speaking. Descendant of a warrior, ascend to the altar of judgment and cast your spell on one of the eight orbs. The divine language will respond. If a red light lights up, you have failed. If a white light comes out, you have passed. Sharon kept asking questions as if he had hired the archer as his personal interpreter. Is there a limit to the number of attempts? For example, can a person try as many times as they want? You can keep trying until you're exhausted. If a passerby comes out, everyone can go to Kerugo. If no one passes, everyone must return. This is the will of the labyrinth and the mission of the people of Kerugo. You said achievement and sacrifice. What does sacrifice mean? A person can pass with the blood of another. Do you mean someone has to die? Yes. Upon hearing that, Sharon lost himself in his thoughts. It is possible to challenge as many times as one wants, and even if only one person succeeds, everyone can pass. But what if nobody succeeds? They would have no choice but to pass through the door with the sacrifice of a companion. And it was one life for each passage. Something is strange. Was it necessary to go to Kerigo with such cruelty? It doesn't make sense to kill comrade just to get to loop. There must be something more in Kerugo. The mercenaries must have come here without knowing the true secret of this underground place. Sharon indicated to continue the interpretation. The information gathered so far was useful, so the archer agreed without a word. Is there any restriction on the sacrifice, like bringing someone else from outside or using the corpse of a dead person? No, from the moment you entered the room, you are one. The door will never open until everyone agrees. Therefore, that question is meaningless. End of chapter 138. Chapter 139. Labyrinth of time and space. 2. Sharon realized the situation. The rule was more restrictive and dangerous than expected. It was much more difficult than he thought to unify most opinions. He didn't know what was in Kergo, but if there was something worth risking his life for, there was a possibility of an internal struggle. What was it that simple? How about this? We'll take care of the four kids and go in. I never knew there was such an easy way. The leader looked back at Sharon and pursed his lips. It was a look expecting a fearful expression, but for Sharon it was pitiable. Once the rule was heard, it was the right way to cooperate, even if they didn't like it. A leader who led with excitement from the start could not only ruin the organization, but also endanger the lives of their comrades. This person is not qualified to be a leader. The other people seem at least halfway decent. As expected, his comrades intervened to dissuade him. If they achieved success, they could pass unconditionally. So considering sacrifice was a later issue. Let's start. How long are we going to stay here? You're a lucky kid. The man with the white tattoo headed to the side of the altar. He crossed his arms where he could see the eight spheres. My explanation ends here. Come out one by one and demonstrate your abilities. Sharon's group and the mercenaries exchanged glances. They were calculating who would benefit from going first. The leader unsheathed his sword and pointed at Sharon. Hey, you go first. Of course, I don't expect much, but do your best so we can have an idea. You never know. Maybe it will take you to Cargo. I don't want to. Why do you decide that unilaterally? What's wrong with that? I really don't like you. Should I kill you right now? Should I kill you and go in? You keep causing trouble. From now on, we need to integrate opinions. Didn't you hear that if a single person refuses, we can't leave? Although there's no limit to the number of attempts, disadvantages can be applied. For those who have attempted it, traps like anti-magic can be triggered. Since we're all novices, we must have careful decisions and determine the order. This little impudent brat. The leader was about to lose his temper. He probably hated that the kid answered him back, but the fact that he couldn't refute was most annoying. But the mage had a different idea. Of course, there might not be particular restrictions, but unless one could see the future, it was good to consider all conceivable variables. The kid is right. Let's decide the order. How will we do it? Sharon looked back at the time and space maze on the altar. Having experienced the phenomenon called spot, he could approximately predict the current situation. That sphere could probably absorb almost infinite energy. It's standard to send back powerful mages and let the warriors go first. Does it have to be so violent? Why the conclusion? It's the best skill that warriors' descendants can test. Besides, looking at the altar, it has a structural characteristics that something is implemented towards a specific target. Therefore, it's reasonable to assume that the device was made with the goal of striking. I'm convinced. Then, let's decide the order. Do we start with the swordsman first? Said the mage, looking back at the leader, but he shook his head as if he were annoyed. No, I'll go later. What does that kid know how to talk about? It's a simple game. Just go out and destroy it. Huh, our leader is like this. What should we do? It doesn't matter. Then we'll send the swordsman from our side. Sharon looked back at the swordsman on his side. Both Rian and Tess were sword warriors, but it was predictable who would go without looking. Once the first attempt was over, a lot of information could be obtained. It was such a heavy mission and such a dangerous role that there was no way Rian would send Tess first. I'll go first. Of course, it might end on my turn. Haha. Well, baseless confidence is. Anyway, be careful. Don't be complacent. Supported by Tess, Rian looked around at the center of the altar. The feeling was definitely different from when seen from the outside. It felt like the spheres in all directions were watching him. Hey, hurry up. Are you scared already? Rian couldn't even hear the leader's words. He had been figuring out what to do since Sharon designated him. In a way, I'm at the forefront. I must gather all the information I can on my turn, right, Sharon? Rian walked towards the northern sphere. It wasn't as transparent as it seemed from afar. Should I say it was filled with a misty fog? He said there's no limit to the number of attempts, right? Rian leaned towards the sphere and tapped it with the back of his hand. When there was no particular response, he gradually increased the force and repeated it. At some point, the mist within the sphere dissipated, and the transparent sphere displayed the number 1. Is that a number? Sharon recalled the explanation heard from the man with the white tattoo. Oh, so the language of God means numbers. Rian just in case, let's step back. Rian calmly took a few steps backward. Shortly after, the sphere emitted a red light, illuminating the room. That meant failure. Everyone wondered what would happen next. But that was it. They observed for about 3 more seconds, but nothing particularly threatening occurred. Ah, so if a white light rises, that means a pass, right? After grasping the rules, returned to the center of the altar and finally drew his straight sword. Then the size of the sword hidden by the giant Rian was revealed. The mercenaries were startled. If all of that was iron, it was a weight that couldn't be lifted unless it was with Schema. Rian, hit it with all your might. Tess, somewhat relaxed, waved her arm and cheered. Just knowing that the attempt didn't harm the person was a great success. Don't worry, I'll crush it in one blow. Rian lowered his stance as he held the sword with both hands. Embarrassingly, his heart was pounding hard. But wasn't this the best situation to start with the sword his grandfather granted him? Moreover, it was a two-handed swing attack with all his heart. All right, here I go. Rian charged at full speed and brought down his great sword. Instead of the powerful blast everyone expected, a low sound wave was heard. The labyrinth of time and space didn't tremble, and there was no reaction. It would have been impossible without absorbing all the force. Phew, Rian maintained the posture of striking the labyrinth of time and space. He could clearly feel the energy draining from his entire body. But more than that, he was curious about the number that would appear on the sphere. Was it a pass or a fail? The sphere turned transparent, revealing the number 241. Considering the impact when the number 1 appeared, it seemed like he did fairly well. Unfortunately, however, the sphere emitted a red light. Oh, it's a real shame. Sharon, can I try it once more? Rian became enthusiastic. Initially, he thought it would be okay to just explore, but when he received a judgment failure, it felt like he was being ignored, and his gut churned. Are you okay? Your legs look shaky. Oh, this? It absorbs all the power. It's not dangerous because it doesn't put too much strain on my body. I'll recover in a while. Sharon nodded at the new information. Ah, I see. It's a disadvantage, but not severe. Anyway, I'm really upset. If only I could have used Schema, I would have been able to pass. At Rian's words, the warrior from the mercenaries group burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, have you been complaining even though you can't use Schema? This is ridiculous. Step aside. I'll try it this time. When the warrior intervened, Rian had no choice but to leave the altar. But even as he walked away, he murmured, just one more time. The kid got 241, right? So, should I aim for around 2,000? The warrior rolled up his sleeves and wielded his main weapon, a mace. He also had an axe at his waist, but seeing Rian's attempt, a mace seemed an easy way to deliver a blow. The warrior took a deep breath and tensed all the muscles in his body, although the muscle fibers didn't significantly thicken. When those changes took place throughout his body, his size increased noticeably. Tess, that guy. That's right, he's a Scamma user. He probably has a structure that enhances strength. Well, it's a natural choice for a warrior. Yeah, here I go. The warrior let out a roar as loud as his size and charged at the same time. His hand spun the mace rapidly. Although it's not a two-handed weapon, adding rotational power would could produce comparable destructive force. The warrior swung his mace downward as if he were going to kill the world's enemy. The action stopped with a low rumble. Like Rian, the feeling of power deprivation paralyzed his entire body. Whew, it's over. I did it, right? The warrior stepped back, breathing heavily. Because the technique seemed impressive, those who watched were expectant. The number 248 appeared. What? What? Nonsense. 248, only 7 points more. Than that kid. Is this thing broken? Tess walked towards the altar, assuming a stance. Do you think this is a cheap toy for a corner store? Get down quickly. The red light is already on. No, I can't accept this. Just once more. I'll try once more. All right, then come out. Whether you want to challenge again or not, first you need to regain your strength. The warrior wrinkled his face as if facing an injustice and turned his body. He couldn't understand it at all. He had never lost in terms of strength since he was a child. It's 248, even with a strength enhancing build. Wait a second. The warrior looked at Rian as if it were absurd. Didn't that boy say he couldn't use Schema? But 241 points? In other words, only with his physical strength, he showed the same power as the warrior who had Schema a moment ago. What? This makes no sense. You can use Schema, right? You lied, didn't you? Why would I lie about something to brag about? If you fail, just wait silently for the next turn. Rian didn't want to chatter about his disqualification. His current interest was how far his friend Tess could go. Tess stood at the center of the altar and unsheathed her sword. There was a fresh sound like sliding on ice. People were mesmerized by the elegant movement, a textbook perfect motion. I'll try it. But wouldn't it be a disadvantage for my rapier? No, not necessarily. It absorbs all the power. It didn't even feel a recoil. When I swung it down, I doubt the sword will bend. Really? Then should I stab it with all my strength? If you're worried, do you want to use my sword? It's heavy, but you can handle it with Scammer, right? Tess raised her sword and bent it with her fingers. The rapier bounced with a tinkling sound, vibrating rapidly like the flapping of the hummingbird's wings. No, I want to test it with my own sword skill. To be honest, this is quite interesting. Tess walked to the end of the altar and stopped at a point from where she could see the labyrinth of time and space diagonally. Acceleration of concentration through schema. There won't be vital points on the spear, but the speed generated by compressing body movement becomes power entirely. Tess charged in a silence, more terrifying than a scream. As expected from her, who scored the highest in the balance test, her angle made her almost level with the ground. The moment she reached the target, her body trembled as if creating a residual image, and the rapier grazing the ground soared. As she stabbed the sphere, with a perfect thrusting motion, there was a flash of light that burst at the tip of her sword. While ordinary sword handling reaches maximum acceleration in the middle point, Tess' stabbing focused sword handling reaches its peak in the sword's final speed. As these characteristics are maximized through schema, an exciting optical illusion occurs. End of chapter 139. Chapter 140, Labyrinth of Time and Space 3. Tess also experienced the power absorption, but without a single interruption. She rewound her actions and sheathed her sword. Distance control, maximum acceleration, everything was perfect. All eyes were focused on the sphere. A number appeared, 442. It was the first time the number surpassed 400. What would be the outcome? Tess looked without showing any emotion. Shortly after, the number disappeared and the sphere turned red. Phew, it didn't work. What a pity. Tess turned around without hesitation. She could understand the feelings of the two who shouted they would try it again, but she thought it would be a loss of dignity to follow their example. Darn it. Is it really broken? She hits it with a rapier. How can she get more than a blunt weapon? The warrior roared in frustration, living in a world that relied on brute strength. Being beaten and outdone by a woman hurt his pride, but from Tess' perspective, it was rather pathetic. My brother about Why bother about that when we both failed? And controlling power and using it are completely different. Why don't you practice some skills instead of just lifting rocks? What? Are you disregarding my strength? Can't you see these muscles? Do you have anything like this? Tess turned her head as if she had seen something disgusting. She thought it would be easier to talk to a cow about subtlety, than argue with this barbarian. She thought it would be easier to talk to a cow about subtlety than argue with this barbarian. Has the sword warrior's trial ended? Then it's my turn. The archer pulled the longbow from behind his back and stepped forward. Given the results so far, it seemed difficult to achieve a high score solely through physical strength. Although an arrow was a physical attack, Although an arrow was a physical attack, the archer was confident, despite being an expensive method. If he didn't display at least some skill, wouldn't people laugh at him? It seems you intend to use that. As the wizard said, the archer pulled an arrowhead from his back and removed the arrow tip. Then he took a uniquely shaped arrowhead from the hard leather pocket on his pants. The tip wasn't sharp but rounded like an almond. Yes, it wasn't the usual color of iron. It was purple. All right, shall we try this one this time? Amy's eyes brightened upon seeing the uniquely colored arrowhead. Indeed, with that it could generate a much more powerful impact than an ordinary arrow. Sharon, look at that. It's a magic bullet. Is that so? Sharon had also heard about magic bullets in class. It was an item infused with magic in magic crystals, extracted in extremely small quantities from nature. The principle of appearance of the magic crystal stone is a mystery, but it's a common theory that it's a chemical reaction responding to unique natural phenomena. For instance, magic crystals of lightning could be collected in dry highlands or tropical jungles where lightning storms often occurred. Minerals gathered in this way showed affinity for specific phenomena, and magical engineers succeeded in storing magic in magic stones using such properties. Of course, this level of success was merely lab science that could hardly be called an achievement. To use magic crystals in real life, it needed support from material science that turned them into energy and mechanical engineering that consumed those materials in various forms. The series of processes in which magic crystals are extracted and consumed by society required so much labor and enormous capital that it could be described as an industry, and the field that competed for the top spot in the industry was the magic bullet, a lethal weapon. So that's the expensive magic bullet. How does it compare to the magic we use? It's not particularly powerful or anything. The big merit is that even those who aren't mages can use magic. It probably costs a gold coin each. Although the weight of the magic bullet that actually goes into the arrowhead is only 10 grams. Sharon opened his mouth with a surprised expression. It costs a gold coin to pluck the string of a bow once. Then how much money was poured into the rain of magic bullets from 3,000 archers mentioned in history books? It's a big deal. I don't think I can use it because it's too valuable. It's natural for us as mages to think about the cost. But in real combat, whether you have a magic bullet or not is a very important matter. You might be able to save your life with just one magic bullet when you're about to die. I see, but do you know a lot about that? They didn't teach us that in class. I just found out recently too. The reason my older brother came home was due to the issue with arrow supply to the Archer division. It seems the company has been committing corruption for a year, but I don't know at what stage the money is leaking. I was curious and asked Need about it, and he knew everything, from the production process to manufacturing technology. Need, when did you ask him that? When you woke up and took a break from the academy, according to rumors, he made an invisible cloak. That's some technology. If it's Need, he probably could make magic bullets. What? Is he going to make that expensive thing himself? What? Didn't you know? Are you really my friend who can't live or die without me? An expression or TN. An expression or saying, but I don't know what it means. Haha, well, but Need always shows strange things, like a courage that never stops or a doll that does a dozen fun dances. Well, just having the technology doesn't make it possible, since it's a state monopoly business. If you don't get a license, you'll be arrested for making illegal weapons. But if you get bored later, ask him to make one for you. If you ask, he'll probably make it. You can buy magic crystals at a low price at the Alchemy Foundation. While Sharon and Amy talked, the archer launched the magic bullet control device. Reactive arrows always need a safety device unless they're in a danger zone. If it reacts to being hit by a courage, a leg would go flying. Hey, I'm going to use magic bullets from now on. It's called the lightning arrow. If you're close, you might get hit, so step back. Sharon and the others moved as far away as possible, within the range of sight. They had hoped the labyrinth of time and space would absorb the magic power, but it was better to be cautious. When the archer tightened the string, even the tension around seemed to increase. A moment later, when he released it with a whistle, the arrow sunk into the labyrinth of time and space with a whoosh. With a swoosh. When the magic bullet reacted, it released powerful lightning. However, the blue electricity was generated only inside the sphere. As expected, it seemed to absorb even the magic power. The sphere flashed for about 3 seconds and then fell silent. People waited for the number to appear, thinking it was really worth the money. 1020. The archer's mouth corners lifted as the score reached 4 digits. But the result was inevitably a failure. After scoring over 1,000 points and getting no result, the archer stepped down from the altar, thinking about his capital. Damn it, what? Did I just waste money? I really can't say that. It looks like your body seems fine. Are you okay? At Amy's words, the archer checked his condition. He saw the swordsman's legs weakening, but this time he was fine. That's right. It seems the labyrinth of time and space doesn't steal the archer's strength. It seems to only measure damage by impact. That might be a piece of information. What are you going to do? Do you want to try it again? The archer looked at the sphere. After all, he got the highest score, so he didn't feel too bad. But spending money beyond this was an obvious thing. No, I don't want to. No matter which attribute I use, it won't make much of a difference, and I don't think I can pass with this. I just wasted the magic bullet. Amy immediately agreed. So is it the wizard's turn now? Sharon, who should go first, you or me? The mercenary wizard smiled and pointed at Amy. Why don't you give it a try? Then it's my turn, so we can definitely compare who's stronger. Amy accepted the challenge, as if there was nothing to hold back. She still had unresolved feelings with that woman. Great, Sharon. Shall I go first then? Yes. Show off your skills. Go for it. Sharon saw potential in Amy. Her specialization was the fire system, which focused on offensive magic. Additionally, she had the target type that emphasized the power of a single shot. There are countless types of magic, and trends change at the speed of development, but the fire system has always been the strongest in the magical world, ranking first in the power category. But Amy was cautious. She stood on the altar, calculating which spell to unleash. It's surprisingly complicated. The distance is too close to use the sniper mode. Should I attack with target type? But then the power will be lower. Unlike the ice system, where, where absolute zero is the limit, the fire system has no limit to the rise in temperature. Many wizards are drawn to its infinite possibilities and choose the flame, but it was difficult even for high-level wizards to surpass the barrier of 1,000 degrees Celsius. Still, fire system spells are powerful. This is because most things on the planet are under the control of 1,000 degrees Celsius. However, just as there is no perfect attribute in the world, there were disadvantages to fire system magic. It was its lightness. The total energy is tremendous, but it lacks weight. They usually craft the air system to complement the impact, and Flame Strike was a representative example. However, due to Flame Strike's nature, its power doubles as the distance increases. In such cases, is it better to focus on the fire? It was also a good strategy to compete with the pure system, which can purely erase the temperature since the time and space maze measures not only impact but also magical power. Thinking of the magic that fits there, Amy made a decision. Fireball. Two flames rose on Amy's palms. Originally, it was a sphere, but due to the nature of fire, it formed a shape of water droplets rising upwards. If there was a difference between fire created by magic and fire in reality, it was indeed the density. In other words, fire mages increase the temperature by adjusting the density of the fire. Additionally, as the temperature increases, they could also increase the flame spread radius. Amy just twisted her wrist while holding the flame, then a fiery fireball stretched its tail and flew. As soon as the flames hit, the time and space maze swallowed them. An incredible fire whirlwind circulated endlessly within the sphere. When the score finally appeared, people burst into exclamations. 3,270. It was the highest score so far And looking at the results so far, it seemed difficult to surpass that score. The archer realized that Sharon and the others were not ordinary students. The power of electric arrow, boosted by magic bullet, was 1020. However, the fact that the power of fireball, the most basic magic, was more than 3 times stronger than that meant that there was a difference in magic level. But Amy frowned. The time and space maze seemed to mock her as if it wasn't enough, emitting a fierce red light. What? What do you want me to do? She thought it wouldn't matter, but she felt like going crazy when she actually failed. Ha ha ha, that's how kids are. Is it my turn now? Wait a minute, I'll try the sniper mode. I'll find out how much you demand today. Sharon smiled awkwardly and headed towards the altar. Amy, who had an extraordinary fighting spirit, wouldn't back down unless he went and stopped her. Settle down for now. If you get angry and lose focus, you won't score more points. Oh, really, Sharon? I'll definitely do it again. Got it? The wizard who ascended the altar turned to Amy and said, "Coincidentally, were we from the w- were we from the same series of mages? I'm also a fire mage. To match your level, I'll try with fireball." Huh, that's funny. She thought the same thing as me. Amy responded with a snort. Anyway, there were no words for the loser, so even responding was annoying. End of chapter 140.